Welcome to Wheels and Watches DIY. Today on the bench we have a pretty interesting and special watch. This is a Seikos Seikomatic P. This is a 33 joule high-end movement with a semi-quick set function, meaning you can change the date really quickly, but the date of the week you need to go back and forth between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. or move your hands all the way past midnight to change that. The reference number of this watch is 51067010. I'll give you a bit of a background on this watch. So the cannon pinion is completely shot, and I sourced a brand new part, and just now you saw me showing off my Seiko turtle from I believe 1986. But let's get back to the cannon pinion real quick. So the reason that it was shot is just wear and tear. I tried to fix that cannon pinion by tightening it up, but it didn't work. It only worked for a little bit, but with time everything wears, so I decided not to mess around, and I sourced a brand new cannon pinion for that movement. We're starting by taking the bracelet off, and I used my Bergeron remover tool. I believe the number for the Bergeron tool is 6767. It's a nice tool. I believe that if you're into watches, it pays to get something of good quality. The metal there is absolutely stellar. The prongs don't bend, and you can use it for many years before you have to replace the tip. Then I used my medium duty MKS back case opener, and then I put plastic over the back case in order to remove that back case lid. You can see how nice this movement is. Some nice red writing. That ring you saw me take out, that was not part of the watch. I put it there because I found that the movement was sliding around just a little bit too much. I did make sure that nothing was interfering with that ring before I installed it. So here you can see me removing the oscillating weight. We removed the screws, and we're gently lifting that oscillating weight, which is going to lift it using my heavy-duty tweezers. By the way, all of the tweezers and screwdrivers have been properly dressed before starting this project. The last thing you want is for something to slip or for you to damage or scratch something. Taking that movement out, you can see how pretty this dial really is. The dial is of this dark navy, deep blue color, so it's just something else. For some reason, the pictures and video never do it justice. In person, it looks much better. So now we are going to take off the hands, and I'm gonna fiddle around with it a little bit. I'm gonna use my Bergeron dial protector. If you don't have access to that, you can use a piece of plastic over it. And I find this works for me because it protects the dial a little bit better when I use my hand remover tools. Inserting this dial protector will take me a minute just because of the raised indices as well as the raised Seiko logo. And I also do not want to damage these hands at all. So bear with me, eventually I will be successful. There we go. So now we are going to use my Bergeron hand lifting tools to lift all three hands at the same time. and all of the hands are going into storage right away because I do not want to lose them and I do not want to damage them. Here we are. We're gonna remove that little retaining ring that goes around the main plate. We're gonna take off 2 screws on either side. Under each screw there's a little washer. Looks like a D-shaped washer that holds it all together. And by taking that little protector off, we're gonna gain access to the dial holding screws. By the way, when I remove the dial, I loosen up the screws, but I don't take them out fully. At least not in this case. So 2 screws, 1 on either side. And then after they are loose, we're gonna gently pry the dial from the main plate, and we're gonna take it off, exposing the calendar works. While we do this, I'll just say this about the watch itself. It's a really neat watch, given that it's relatively thin. It has all those functions. So we have manual winding, we have automatic winding, we have weekday, and we have date and hacking in something that's 33 joules, and it's 55, 60 years old. It's kind of amazing. So I think these watches are super underrated. So if you ever find a Seikomatic P in good condition, I would suggest you buy it and wear it because they're just plain cool. So here you see me securing the main plate. You got to be careful not to pinch the balance, and that's what you saw me do there just a second ago. That little washer that you see there on top of that screen that goes in between the dial and the weekday wheel. Now we're gently lifting off the weekday wheel, exposing the plate that holds the date wheel, as well as some springs and levers that make all this magic happen. Just heads up, I will have to disassemble and reassemble this a few times. There's a few things that were not lining up properly, so bear with me. So that there are 3 screws that hold this plate together. This is probably my tiniest screwdriver that I do have, and I believe that's the size of it is 0.6. Again, making sure that the tweezers and the screwdrivers are dressed will minimize chances of you damaging anything or losing any parts in the process. All right. That plate is off, and you could see that spring on that bottom left, I suppose. Now it's at the bottom at 6 o'clock. It's out of position. That spring is responsible for snapping that date once the hands go past midnight. There's another little spring that's there. You could see me holding the end of that spring there. The reason I do it is because if you try to remove those springs with just a set of tweezers, there's a really good chance you are going to lose it, and once it pops, you will not find it. So using either pegwood, Rodico, or stick like I have is probably the best course of action. Here I'm just messing around with some extra parts that I don't need to really worry about, but I'm just moving them out of the way. Now I'm taking off the hour wheel, which, by the way, I do forget to install, and I'll have to reassemble it once more, but we're gonna get to that in just a little bit. So here we are, getting to the Canon Pinion. I'm using my Bergeon Canon Pinion remover to get that thing out. And what you don't see on the screen is me cleaning the new Canon Pinion. So I did clean it in a degreaser, and then I rinsed it in 3 rinses of 99% IPA, and then I dried it using my food dehydrator. There we go, comparing the old with the new. And before installing anything, I did make sure that the Canon Pinions were identical to one another. So this is me starting to reassemble. The new Canon Pinion I found to be a little bit difficult to install. I mean, it is an OS. It was a little tight, but with a little bit of patience, no problem. I did put some lubrication just to make sure that we don't have metal on metal action. And then I played around with a few different styles of tweezers to install it. To press it down, I'm using my not so great tweezers. So if I bend them or anything happens, it's not a big deal. I really don't want to use my Dumont ones. Try to use number 7s for this, but again, I didn't want to damage them. It wasn't going in. So I readjusted everything, and you'll see me use something else to snap the Canon Pinion in place. Check in position. And here we are. It is moving. Now we are going to try and reassemble it. We are installing the lever slide with the date cam and the date cam jumper. Just lining everything up there. And here you can see me using my Dumont number 7s. I have 2 of them, and I must admit they are pretty handy. And now we are reinstalling the date wheel and that lever and the spring that holds tension against that lever. So 2 springs, one that's resting, excuse me, that is resting on a little lever that is right against the hour wheel, which, by the way, I'll remind you, I did forget to install in this take, but I'll realize it at one point, and I'll have to disassemble a few things to pop it back in. And then now we are installing that spring that's holding the tension against the lever that's responsible for the date change function. So first I installed that little spring, I put it against the lever, then I installed the date wheel, and then using my Dumont number 7s, I click it and it rests right in between those teeth you see there. Everything looks in place except for the hour wheel. So after I install the plate, I realize that it is missing. So bear with me. And by the way, when you're installing that plate, it just drops in. Nothing should be sticking out. If it is, something is not right. So it's better to take a plate off, make sure everything is seated correctly, and then reinstall it. Another thing I'll mention, the screws, when you put them back in, first I just thread them, and then to tighten them up, you go to the end, you have to feel the end of that thread. Don't over tighten them. The last thing you want is to damage the screw head or snap it all together. So after I reinstall that last screw here you go, you see me there tightening them up. I will realize that something is missing. And that something is the hour wheel. And I'm going to take that plate off. The plate's coming off again. And then just to go forward a little bit, I don't think I included it, but that hour wheel wasn't seated the first time I installed it. It was just slightly off. So as a result, the weekday function wasn't working well, and the problem was it wasn't contacting the intermediate wheel to the left properly. So I took the plate off, readjusted the hour wheel so it meshes with all the gears properly, and then I put everything back together and covered it with a plate. Here's that date wheel again. Looks pretty good. All the springs are in. The plate lines up nice and easy. Looks like everything is meshing. Again, be careful with these tiny screws when you pop them back in. Make them tight, but do not over tighten them. And I think this is the last one. Then we're going to install the weekday wheel, and then that little lever you see next to the right of that hour wheel that needs to mesh with the teeth underneath the weekday wheel. Something to note, you can see the weekday wheel is only in English, which is totally fine. And this is where, let's go back a little bit, this is where I found that the hour wheel wasn't meshing. So we'll take that plate off. I'm looking where it's lifting or where it's not seated properly. Taking the lever slide out. Adjusting that hour wheel so it meshes with that intermediate wheel to the left of it. Then readjusting the datecom jumper, and we are going to reinstall the lever slide as well. Okay, so things are going back in, both of those springs. One on kind of around 3 o'clock position, and one would be around 6, 7 o'clock position. Yep, that wheel, jumper spring is in. The date wheel goes back in. And now the lever slide. It's going to mesh with the datecom, and the date cam jumper. The plate goes over, everything falls right into place, and the 3 screws go back in. And I think this is the final time I put this together before reinstalling the weekday wheel, which I'll remind you, that little lever that you see at 6 o'clock position, or 5 or 6 o'clock position, that needs to mesh with the teeth underneath the weekday wheel. Okay, so the screws are nice and tight. The wheel goes in. Here, you didn't see it, but I made sure that the teeth were meshing with that little lever to the right of it. The washer goes in between the weekday wheel and the dial. We're securing the dial screws before doing some preliminary testing and making sure the functions are working. I'll do a close-up in just a minute here. Okay, so let's advance everything forward. Make sure that the weekday and the date change, and then the quick set for the date functions. Now we're reinstalling that little guard. I took that stem out. I find it easier that way. So we're adjusting the position of that guard and securing that guard with a little screw on each side, and between the screw and the plate we have a D-shaped washer. I found it useful just to gently secure the screws, but don't tighten them, and after they are in the threads, you readjust the position of that guard just so you have enough space to reinsert the stem. So that's what I'm doing there. When I'm happy with the positioning, I'm going to tighten up those screws and reinstall the stem. You can see me there trying to reinstall the stem a few times. Word of caution, if the stem feels tight, if something doesn't go in, please take it out. Don't force it in. It's way better to take it out, reposition, and put it back in properly, rather than break something and spend a lot of time and money hunting for parts. So here we are, gonna reinstall the hands. We're gonna make sure that everything jumps over at midnight. And we'll start with the hour hand. The process for all 3 hands, I would suppose, is the same. I'm going to use my blower here in a second just to get any dust, debris, anything from the dial. I like to use a piece of rodical to hold the hands. And then here you see me use my, it's a special dial cleaner. I got it not too long ago. It is technically useful for high-end cameras to use on those high-end lenses. But if it's good enough for those, it's good enough for a dial. So here you can see me securing the hand just a little bit and making sure everything pops over. I'm not happy with the placement. It's just before midnight. So I'm using a piece of plastic over the dial to gently lift the hand, reposition, and install it again using my Bergeon hand setting tool. Here we go, looks much better. Snaps over right at midnight. We will secure the hand, and then we're going to do the same thing with the hour hand. First, just gently placing that hand and gently securing it, testing the function looking at the spacing between the hands and readjusting until I feel like it's in a good position. Once it's in good position, we're going to firmly attach it and then make sure that it snaps over right at midnight. So here you can see me, well, off screen almost. I'm readjusting the position of that hand, and let's see how it snaps over. And I think it snaps over right at midnight. Perfect. And we're gonna do the same thing with the second hand. Once again, I'm using my Bergeron hand setting tools. Here you could see me moving the hands forward, superimposed on one another, checking for spacing, checking for function, and it snaps right at midnight. Perfect. And now we're ready to case it. We're gonna use the blower and maybe Rodico just the last little bit to lift any debris that's stuck on the dial. We'll take that movement out. We're going to release the stem. And then we're going to case the movement. We're going to flip it over, reinsert the stem. Here we go. The balance is moving, everything's working. Now we are going to reinstall the balance weight. It's firmly in place. We're going to use that screw to secure it. Again, I'm going to hold my tweezers. I'm going to hold my screwdriver with my tweezers just so nothing slips. Everything is working. Nothing's touching. And then positioning that little washer, if you will. And the watch is done. We're going to check for function, set the date, and the project is done. I think overall it has been a really fun project. You can see there I tested for function. The cannon pinion feels good. When I'm using the stem, it feels tight. I feel resistance just like the way it should. And we'll see how it goes over the next few days. Overall, it was not an easy project, but like I said, it was fun. I did learn quite a bit. Using the right tools obviously did make a difference. Some things are essential, some things you can go without, but at the end of the day, whatever makes you comfortable, whatever you like using, as long as you get the job done right without damaging anything, that's the most important thing. Okay, here we go. That's a finished project. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you at the next video.